All right, let's get going. Hope you had a nice lunch and that you're ready to not take a nap, but jump in on blended and distance learning. You may be facing one, you may be facing the other, you may be facing both as school goes on. So we kind of have to be prepared for changing circumstances. Maybe you start off fully remote and then you can get to blended learning, or you start blended learning and other things can happen, so you end up going full remote. So I think it's important to look at things in both ways. The good news is that a lot of the parts of it, thinking of it, can be consistent. There are some pieces that you'll want to think about a little differently as time goes on. So some considerations for going back to school, no matter what the format is. Going back after what happened in the spring and given the uncertainty of the future. So first of all, let's talk about humanizing mathematics. We have to really pay particular attention to the social and emotional state of our students this year, more so than ever. It's always a good practice, but even more so this year. In general, mathematics classrooms, the effective ones create a community of learners who can trust in each other and believe in each other and help each other out, who can rely on each other. And one of the great things about modeling our world with mathematics is that we start with a module and getting started that really helps you to do that. And the big things you're going to want to think about is the building of relationships. That's your building of relationships with your students, their relationships with each other. And another key component that we often don't think about in high school, but almost everyone I talked to in the spring said that a teacher's relationship with the parents of their students became much more important in this setting than it had ever been before. And so also establishing those relationships can be a really, really big help. Serena talked to you about assessment. We want to think about assessment as a positive thing, as in basing it on what students already know and where it can take them, rather than looking at from a deficit perspective. And that a large part of that has to do with using those formative practices and doing it in small chunks. And then also, again, leveraging student understanding. What do they know and how can we help them to use that for what else we want them to be able to understand? For the next one, course level content, we want to intentionally structure the learning around the course level mathematics, thinking about what is really critical for students to understand from the course. And again, modeling is well situated for this because you can select from those modules to decide what really matters most to students. So if you can't get through as much material as you normally would because of your learning situation, you can prioritize that. And that's what we really want you to think about doing. We have given you a progression of modules. It's posted. And for those of you that are returning teachers, that has been updated because of some new materials that have been added and some changing that we've of sequencing that we've done. But you can certainly take a look and decide once you start working with students and you do your getting started module, where do you want to go next? And what makes sense? Do you want to immediately dive in on Health 1? Is that something your students need, and continue from there? And then, so prioritizing the content. And on-time supports, which of course is something that also is foundational to modeling our role with mathematics. That you take a look at those thinking banks that come at the end of the modules and extra materials that can help you scaffold your instruction and help students with maybe where they do have some gaps. And then we always want to make sure that we focus on instructional best practices. It does not matter what your school structure is, whether students are there 5 days a week, 2 days a week, or not at all. We really need to make sure that we are using the things that make mathematics instruction work. So those are the big ideas that go with it. And the top things that to think about, if I had to just generalize what instructional best practice looks like, is are you focusing on discourse and the standards for mathematical practice? that those are the ones that are really going to help our students no matter what their structure is for learning. So that's the big ideas that we hope that districts are thinking about and that we encourage you to think about in your classroom.